What's up? It's your boy. Welcome back to the Black Muse Podcast. It's your boy, Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse. It's been a lot of news lately. And actually, what I was going to talk about is quasi related to the bigger news, which I had to incorporate. And that bigger news is that uh, former Democratic Party presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard has declared that she's officially leaving the Democratic Party. And as you would expect, there's been a lot of smug dismissiveness from those on the left who are implicated in the kinds of things that she's criticizing. They downplay it or they flat out deny that there's any truth to any of the claims that she cites as the reasons why she left the party. Um, I've seen Kyle Kalinske cover it. I've seen David Pakman cover it. I've seen members of the Young Turks cover it. And it's pretty consistent, typical woke-tarded dismissals of what I think are very substantive criticisms of the sad state of progressivism in this country and the sad state of the left generally. And that Tulsi Gabbard no longer wants to fuck with that or deal with that anymore makes a lot of sense. But if you hear it from the progressive types, such as the figures that I just named in independent media, they'd have you believe that, well, what Tulsi's basically been doing is sliding more and more to the far right anyway, because anything that deviates from their woke orthodoxy is apparently far right. Even figures who are independent or in the middle, even classical liberals, Joe Rogan, freaking uh, Elon Musk, or even somebody like Bill Maher, even they're starting to like call out the woke tardedness that is happening on the left, and it's becoming more and more endemic to the left. But yet progressives, if only to save face, are pretending like it's a small faction. It's almost no one. They've been lying about that for a long time now. And I think at first it used to be true, but there is a minority faction with an outsized voice on the discourse from the left, and what makes it really really bad is they are small, generally speaking, relative to the entire left, but so many people on the left don't speak up against it because the cultural milieu on the left is that you face all kinds of social ostracization if you do that, and that's how the rabble rousers kind of keep the more sane versions of progressive types and leftist types in line with a bunch of batshit crazy ideas that they pretend aren't crazy because they say so or some shit. And so anybody who's willing to speak out against it gets castigated and lumped in with the no good, very bad, evil Republicans for some reason, as if those of us who exist in the middle, who are more moderate and don't really claim any political party or claim any extreme side, as if we don't exist. um, and this from the people who are always screaming that to disagree with trans ideology means you're denying the existence of trans people. I think I've always thought that that was funny. So I'm incorporating this into a kind of wider story about trends whereby Black voters and Latino voters are actually starting to leave the Democratic Party behind as well. And the Democratic Party, in terms of voting amongst Blacks and Latinos, they're slipping, they're losing their grip for a bunch of different reasons, some of which are actually intimately related with the kinds of things that drove Tulsi Gabbard away from that side. Um, it's really, really hard to be in bed with the progressives, given the way they politic these days, because they're increasingly quixotic and absurd in their demands. A lot of their policy positions don't make any fucking sense. They're uber fucking radical, but yet they pretend as if they're the most sensible. And anything that deviates too far from their preferred policy prescriptions, that's the radical stuff, that's the evil stuff, that's the MAGA stuff, that's the Q people stuff, that's the uneducated stuff, I guess. I just wish we could be more sensible than that. I do make myself listen to progressives because I don't have all the answers. And I think the thing that I'm fundamentally against the most is the false sense of certainty that a lot of these smug assholes have. And don't get me wrong, smug assholes are everywhere. They exist in the right, they exist on the left, and they exist even in the middle. And I've even had my share of smugness. Perhaps I'm even displaying some of that now. But fundamentally, I don't think that all of my opinions are 100% correct at all times. I'm willing to admit at all times my own fallibility, and it seems like more and more the woke tards on the left are not, and perhaps the extreme people on the right are not either. And it doesn't really serve our country or our discourse very well. So I'm going to start by showing you the very short clip of Tulsi Gabbard laying out the reasons why she's leaving the Democrat Party, and then I'm going to try to center that or combine that with the wider discussion about why a lot of people are disillusioned by the Democrat Party these days. And don't get me wrong, there are people who are disillusioned by the GOP as well. And I'm going to do a segment about that as well. But there are a lot. Tulsi Gabbard ain't the only one who's abandoning the Democratic Party these days. And so anybody like David Pakman, Kyle Kalinske, or the woke-tarded motherfuckers of the Young Turks who are acting like there's no legitimate rationale or basis for people not wanting to fuck with them anymore, not wanting to fuck with the left anymore. Yeah, they're full of shit. And they're disingenuous as fuck. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. I'm going to do this in several parts. So without further ado, here is Tulsi Gabbard from her own mouth.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
So I want to start by playing this segment from CNN, and then I want to go over kind of what I think the wider implications are. So I'm going to go play it, and then I'm going to go ahead and talk my shit afterwards. Here it goes.
New data is now showing warning signs for Democrats ahead of the midterms. A key voting group that is considered reliably Democratic does not seem as solidly blue as it once was. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enton is joining us now. So, Harry, as we move into the midterms here, you say that we're actually seeing some real movement among a core Democratic group.
Yeah, so take a look here. This is black voters' electoral preferences in pre-election polling. Look, black voters are the core part of the Democratic Party. And as you can see here in the race for Congress, look, they're still getting 74% support in the pre-election polling right now. But compare that to the final polling for 2020 president and 2018 Congress. Back in 2020, it was 84%. 85% in 2018. So you're clearly seeing right here that there is less support for Democratic candidates for Congress among African Americans. And you can look at the Republican column as well, and you can see that 12%, not exactly high, but that's actually the high watermark. It was 9% in 2020, 9% in 2018. So basically what was about a 75, 76-point margin is now down in the low 60s. So look, Democrats still well ahead with African Americans, but in a game in which you're trying to drive up margins, the margin among African Americans for Democrats is clearly down.
So what's going on here? What's the cause of this?
You know, there's a lot of things that could be going on. And the truth of the matter is, when you look across polling, it's actually kind of hard to build up a large enough sample size to really dig in on a lot of questions. But I think that this kind of gets at the core part of it. Take a look at Joe Biden's approval rating among black adults. If you go back to January to June of 2021, look how high it was. It's 87%. 87%, basically matching what he got in the 2020 election. But look at that approval rating now in August and September of 2022. It's all the way down to 64%. Now, obviously, Joe Biden's approval rating with all Americans is down, but it's not down by anywhere near this amount. This 23-point drop among all Americans, it's only down about 10 to 15 points. So there is a disproportionate drop in Joe Biden's approval rating among African Americans. And I think that's kind of driving why you're seeing Democrats running for Congress getting a significantly lower margin than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, that is huge. That is a huge drop there. What about, are there any states where this might have more of an effect than other places?
Yeah, so, if we're looking at sort of the battleground states, the states with close Senate or governor races in 2022, look at the black share of the electorate. These are the states where it makes up a significant portion. Georgia, the big one. Look at that, 33%. North Carolina, 23%. There's a key gubernatorial race there. Florida, governor and a Senate race there, 14%. Ohio, 11%. Pennsylvania, 10%, obviously a key gubernatorial and Senate race there. And then Nevada, where you might say, okay, that's a state with a large Hispanic population, there's actually also a large African-American population as well. So if you look across the polling, or you're looking across the electoral map, you're clearly seeing that there are a lot of places where this black voter movement could, in fact, have a significant thing that's going on. And the other thing I'll point out, you're talking about Georgia, right? This, I think, is key. Stacey Abrams, the Democrat who's basically running there, that should be a D. There we go. If you're looking at Georgia here, what you should see is you can see, if you compare the 2022 polling to 2018, Brian Kemp is clearly picking up ground overall, 6 points. His lead is 6 points larger. But among African-American voters, look at that. Stacey Abrams' lead is actually down from 79 points in the final 2018 polling to 67 points now. So in Georgia, this key state where black voters make up such a large portion of the electorate, you're seeing, again, more movement among black voters away from the Democratic Party than you're seeing among voters overall.
And then lastly, black voters aren't the only group, right, that's considered usually Democratic reliably, where Democrats seem to be struggling with them.
That's exactly right. So this seems to be a problem across a lot of groups that are sort of umbrellaed under voters of color. Look at Hispanic voters' choice for Congress, Democrats and Republicans. Look in September of 2022, Democrats at 54%. That's the same as it was in October of 2020, but it's down significantly from 2018, November 2018, when it was 60%. And look at among Republicans. Look at the support, 33% now. That is the high water mark. That margin and the choice for Congress, look at that. It was 34 points back in November of 2018. Then it became 26 points. And now, get that, it's just 21 points.
Wow, that is something. Harry, thank you so much for walking us through all those numbers.
So as you saw from that segment there are trends that Democrats should find alarming because in the first place, the black vote is key to their ability to win in various different places in the country, especially in presidential races. But in the midterms, we're not talking about the presidential race. We're talking about the Senate and the House. And there are a lot of key battleground states. We're also talking about gubernatorial races for governor. The trends as they stand right now indicate that viewing Tulsi Gabbard as a kind of one-off doesn't make any sense. There are more general trends in the electorate shifting away from the Democrat Party. And what I hear from a lot of progressive figures is that the reason for this has nothing to do with the craziness of their views. It has nothing to do with how wokeness has taken over the Democrat Party at all. That's nonsense. And apparently that's a talking point of the right wing. I'm not even a fucking right winger or a conservative, but I see that shit's actually true, or there's a lot of truth to it. But whatever, I guess I'm falling prey to the right wing conspiracy. It's not that it's a conspiracy, but we can see the trends, and we know how progressives talk about things and what they actually say with their whole ass chest. Now, you could do what Kyle Kalinske does, which I think is a little disingenuous. So you could say, name the amount of people in the Democrat Party who are uber woke. It's like, but that's not the point. The point is not that you have a majority faction of the Democrat Party who is uber woke. The problem is that you have a significant amount of the voting bloc of the left, or the electorate of the left, that is subscribing to a bunch of dumbass policies that are influenced by woke ideological presuppositions, that even the politicians who aren't woke really have to kowtow to that shit in order to make sure that they get votes, in order to win re-election, in order to stay in power. So don't come to me with this dumb-ass argument, Kyle Kalinske, and say some shit like, how many people in the Democrat Party are super woke? The fuck? Like, you don't have to actually be that in order to kowtow to wokeness ideologically or the policies that hail from it. That's obviously true. Right? And you can replicate this in order to see this logic fully if you're just not inclined to believe it that way. I mean, how many actual Republicans are actually willing to come out with their whole ass chest and be like, whites should be supreme? Right? Like how dumb is that? Right? But it is the core contention of people on the left that there's some kind of white supremacist thing going on the right wing. The no good, very bad, evil Republicans in bed with the white supremacists. They've been talking that shit for years now. And if you can apply, if you understand that you don't necessarily need a majority of the GOP or a majority of the Republican Party to come out with their whole ass chest and be like, yeah, we think that we should have white nationalism. we think that white people are superior to everybody else. But yet you still maintain that that's still something that's driving that side, then you can understand the fucking logic in the other direction. It's not that difficult to fucking understand. But sadly, for the Democrats right now, it's actually worse because it's not just the black electorate that's shifting away from the Democrat Party. It's also Latinos. So what I want to show you is an article by Politico. The headline reads, Dim lead with Latinos halved in the past decade, poll says. Halved in the past decade. The results of the NBC Telemundo survey results come after Republicans made gains with Latino voters in the 2020 election. President Joe Biden's approval rating in the latest NBC News Telemundo poll was 51%, and his disapproval rating was 45%. This was written by Olivia Olander on the 2nd of October. Just about 10 days ago. The Democratic advantage among Latino voters has shrunk by half in the past decade, according to the NBC News Telemundo poll released Sunday. 54% of Latino voters surveyed said that they prefer Democrats to be in charge of Congress, compared with 33% who would prefer Republicans. That gap, now 21 points, was a 42-point difference in October of 2012. The poll results come after the Republicans made gains with Latino voters in the 2020 election. Republicans have also put forth a slate of Latino House candidates in the upcoming midterm elections. The question of party preference has slid fairly steadily in the past decade, with a 26-point gap in October 2020, a 34-point gap in November 2018, and a 38-point gap in October of 2016. President Joe Biden's approval rating in the latest NBC News Telemundo poll was 51%. His disapproval rating was 45%. Latina women, as well as Catholic Latinos and older Latinos, were generally more supportive of Biden, according to the poll. A majority of voters surveyed said they disapproved of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade in June, signaling support for abortion rights. However, opinion on the decision varied widely by party, with far more Democrats signaling disapproval than Republicans, 75% to 22%. Most Latino evangelical Christian voters said that they approved of the decision that ended the constitutional right to an abortion, and most Latino Catholic voters disapproved of it, according to the survey. In the largely religious Hispanic region of South Texas, a handful of Democrat candidates have avoided campaigning on abortion to the extent of other Democrat candidates across the country. I wonder why. Politico previously reported Republicans are looking to continue carving inroads with Latino voters in the same region. More voters said they thought Democrats were better at handling abortion than Republicans at 50% to 23%, but Republicans held a perceived advantage on handling the economy and crime with a 4-point and 10-point lead on those issues, respectively. No fucking shit. Julio Vaquero, a Telemundo anchor, emphasized on Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press that there wasn't just one Latino vote. We talk a lot about that, but I don't think it's always understood, Vaquero said. Latinos are just like any other ethnic group. It's important where they live. It's important their age, where they come from, how they go to this country. The NBC News Telemundo poll was conducted September 17th through 26th among 1,000 Latino registered voters. The poll has an overall margin of sampling error of plus or minus 3.1 percentage points. Political. So, all that to say that these trends are wider than just Tulsi fucking Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is a symptom of a wider trend that Democrats need to start paying attention to and start worrying about, because these are the indicators that they might get trounced in the upcoming midterms. All right. And in certain places where it makes sense to, they're campaigning off of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and they're understandably fear-mongering about it as if it's the worst thing ever to leave it up to the states. And I'm ambivalent on the abortion issue, and I've said that before. So I do think that there are some legitimate concerns about that. I'm not going to try to downplay that or trivialize that. But it seems like the Democrats' playbook, they need to weaponize some kind of crisis. They need to make it. They depend fundamentally on that in all of their go-to political strategy. How are they going to win elections when there's no pandemic? How are they going to win elections when they can't fearmonger about that? They've made inroads with mail-in voting. They've gotten a big portion of the country to normalize, to norm on that. And for a while there, it seemed like a whole bunch of people were on board with the idea that somehow going back to normal in the wake of the pandemic being over, according to current President Joe Biden, who's never wrong about anything ever, right, libs? Right? There doesn't seem to be any need to have pandemic accommodations after a pandemic for voting. But it seems like the whole time the goal wasn't really to have it be temporary. The goal was to have it be permanent, to whatever extent that Democrats stand to benefit from that kind of thing. Okay. But we have in certain places restrictions that calibrate things back to normalcy, pre-pandemic normalcy in places like Georgia, and the woketards are losing their fucking minds over it. I don't understand that. Why can't people vote like they've always voted? If the pandemic is over, why can't people vote like they've always voted? Like if it was good enough before the pandemic, why is it all of a sudden the end of our democracy or some shit if it's after the pandemic, according to Joe Biden, because we're no longer in a pandemic, according to him. Unless you want to admit that Democrats get things wrong sometimes. And I don't know if leftists want to do that. I don't know if the blue no matter who crowd wants to do that. So I don't understand the downplaying of all of these things. I think that that's going to be to the detriment of the left, generally, and Democrats in particular, which the left is married to, even though they kind of are, some of them are more so than others, are outspoken about the fact that they don't like certain Democratic figures. I mean, Joe Manchin was getting it for a while because he was blocking legislation that the left really, really, really wanted, or at least versions close to what they really, really wanted. Also, leftists, how's that $15 minimum wage coming? Y'all better get that shit in now, because I don't know if you're going to be able to do it after the midterms. You might, though. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past the GOP Republicans to fuck this up somehow. And I don't really like them either. I guess the lesser of two evils calculus, which is sad. I do a little bit differently from the progressive types. I would rather have low gas prices, no World War III, no inflation, and nobody trying to trans the kids over whatever the fuck the progressives are running on these days. Oh, and then the other thing is the open borders thing. So I don't understand how progressives deny that we're effectively have open borders insofar as we're not really securing it, and people can just illegally cross into our country willy-nilly on a regular basis, and they have in record numbers. That's well documented. That's proven. That you can't even deny that. I mean, you could, but like you're just gonna look stupid if you do, because like we have the numbers. Like, so to deny that country is weird. Like, what are you denying exactly? Like the presence of barriers are there, because they do have some barriers, motherfuckers. We see them on TV hopping them all the time. I genuinely don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. I don't fucking get it. David Pakman denied, just kind of casual. He didn't even say anything substantive. He just kind of denied and scoffed at Tulsi Gabbard, who he pronounces Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know if he's doing that to make fun of her or he just sucks at pronouncing her name, but it was annoying me. But maybe he means to imply that she's a tool and he calls her Tulsi Gabbard to mock her, or maybe he just sucks at pronouncing her name. I don't know, but like he scoffed at that like that wasn't true, and that was weird. Like, what? How is that not true? In fact, what I want to do now that I think about it, is I want to play David Pakman's stuff and comment on his commentary, because a lot of that shit seemed unfounded. I might agree with some of the stuff he says, but this motherfucker is hella smug and hella biased, bro. Like how can you be that smug and that biased? All right, here we go.
Well, we just have so much news after the long holiday weekend, and we have to start with arguably the biggest news in the world. Tulsi Gabbard has
Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know if he's doing. I honestly don't know if he's doing that on purpose, or if he just sucks at pronouncing her name. But he might, because he does like little sneak disses and shit. So he might be implying that she's a tool or some shit.
Left the Democratic Party. And she's done it with a pretty conspiracy and lie-laden video. Now, this is actually not very big news. I'm sort of kind of kidding around. It's tongue-in-cheek. Tulsi Gabbard is an individual who used to be a congresswoman representing the state of Hawaii. And she ran for president and got, like a 2% support. And then she
also ended Kamala Harris's presidential run on the debate stage by exposing her terrible record, criminalizing.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
I love how he left that out, but I don't. I mean, to be fair to him, it's not really germane to the commentary he wants to give. But I think a lot of leftists generally and Democrat supporters in particular are still salty about that. Because after that, Kamala Harris was not finna be president, fam. Like bruh. Bruh. Now, many of us knew that shit already. And she wasn't polling particularly well. But she was polling better than she was after that, but she wasn't polling that well. But damn. Tulsi Gabbard ended that shit for Kamala Harris, bro. That shit was epic, bro. But let's go back to this motherfucking Pac-Man.
Although it was obvious to some of us that she was clearly a sort of populist rhetoric, reactionary contrarian of no real substance, adding no real value to the conversation.
That's probably the most smug way to say that they disagreed with her. She wasn't woke enough. She wasn't progressive enough. She wasn't left-leaning enough in her persuasions. She dared to challenge their orthodoxy. To say she brings no value and no substance, like what? Maybe. To still met him a little bit though. I don't even know that I agree with all of her policy positions, to be fair. I kind of liked her willingness to not kowtow so hard to the party line. I like that in candidates in general. I like independent thinkers in general. So there's some value with her. But yeah, from the point of view of a progressive who have very narrow kind of parameters around what is acceptable political positions, yeah, she wasn't going to pass those purity tests for sure.
Not everybody understood that. Even some of my fellow leftists kind of fell for it, and she's been more and more outwardly moving to the right, speaking at CPAC, the extreme right-wing convention.
CPAC is an extreme right-wing convention. It's a right-wing convention. I don't know what's extreme about it. I mean, there's left-wing conventions. Are they extreme? Maybe. Okay. I guess that just seemed like an ad hoc for no real reason. I don't think he can back that up at all. But I do think that he's given commentary where he's tried to give some credence to what I think is just a vapid ad hom, pointing out certain figures at CPAC who've said things that he attributes, to the Q people and conspiratorial things and all that kind of stuff. Baseless accusations that people want a Christian nationalist state. I think that the no good, very bad, evil Republicans, as he and other leftists have come to think of them, make all kinds of appeals to this being God's country and this is a Christian nation and stuff like that. And up until about a few years ago, Democrats used to do that too. So it's kind of normal. But the progressives don't really have an appetite for it or tolerance for it anymore. Because their whole kind of framing of things is that they're in some sense like anti-religious. They don't think that, or at the very least, they don't think that religion should have any sway over our politics whatsoever. And to a certain extent, I understand that because we're supposed to be living in a secular society, separation of church and state, all that kind of stuff. And you do have people like Lauren Boebert who has said outwardly that the separation of church and state thing, in some sense, she's voiced that she clearly doesn't like that. And I've spoken with conservative types recently who are in that vein. They think that there's something detrimental about taking God out of everything. And they think, that this nation would be better if it would recognize, I guess, as a Christian nation. And so you take those kinds of comments here and there by people like those figures, which those are actual comments that they have made. And you can run with that like really, really far and fearmonger about it and go see what they want as a Christian nationalist state. Like, I don't know if that's the best conclusion to draw from that, but they clearly do want God and their conception of what's good from a Christian lens put back into things in our society, in our government, etc. I would even give them pushback. I wouldn't pretend like they want a Christian nationalist state. That's stupid. But I would give them pushback and be like, nah, this is a secular country, fam. Like, there's a reason for the separation of church and state. And I don't want to have to force people to live by your Christian values. So I would agree with the leftists slightly. I just wouldn't get over the top with the fear mongering on it, but whatever.
Being selected to fill in as host for Fox News propagandist Tucker Carlson. And listen, this is the final step in her public transformation, it's really not that much of a transformation. So here is the video.
That's a lot of ad homs he's sliding in there. Propaganda. I mean, I do think that Fox News engages in propaganda for sure. And so to whatever extent Tucker Carlson is instrumental in that, he's a propagandist, but no more so than Brian Stelter of CNN or the former CNN anchor Cuomo or Don Lemon of CNN or all of those motherfuckers on MSNBC, including but not limited to what's her name? I can't remember her name right now. The proud lesbian who talked about that Steele dossier for like months and then didn't reveal shit. Rachel Maddow. I don't know why I always forget her name when I want to call it to memory. Rachel Maddow. All of those people, I guess, are propagandists in an analogous way, but from the point of view of the left. So as long as we're going to be consistent in the application of that in that clearly pejorative term, I'm cool with him applying it to Tucker Carlson because he doesn't do anything any differently from what those people do. But if we're gonna like only call the Fox News anchors propagandists and pretend like CNN and MSNBC are on the up and up and they're fair, neutral, fucking objective journalists, then fuck you, David Pakman, because you're full of shit.
80 seconds in which Tulsi announces her principled and defiant abandonment of the Republican Party. Listen closely because there's a lot of nonsense in here.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers.
Now, elitist cabal, that is very carefully chosen language to appeal to the reactionary, conservative, MAGA, big lie, JFK Jr. is currently the vice president type of people. Elitist cabal is QAnon language. Do not think that the choice of that language is an accident. Now,
talk about leaving the conclusions. So this is, one of the reasons why I wanted to show this because I wanted to show how he reasons through these things or reasons poorly through these things. To associate the use of certain verbiage with a certain group of people who, in the eyes of the progressives, are supposed to be really, really bad politically. The Q people, they're the crazy people, the conspiracy people. In order to tacitly associate her with them in baseless ways that don't make any fucking sense, and how casually he does that, and people won't give him any pushback because they are already primed and conditioned to think of these things in the same vein and to associate these things even when they don't necessarily like fit together. So when it comes to a figure like Tulsi Gabbard is not a QAnon person. She doesn't espouse Q views, not that I know of, and nothing about what she's saying is suggesting any of that. Right, but this is the tacit sophistry of the dog whistle rhetoric. The dog whistle discourse, which is what it tacitly does is it enables a person to kind of misattribute a whole bunch of shit to people based on the fact that the language that they employ is itself associated with all of those bad things. So if you employ the use of language that a person from a given ideological set of presuppositions associates with bad stuff, then the fact that you use that language associates you with the bad stuff. And then they get to accuse you of the bad stuff in virtue of the fact that you use the no words. I can't stand that shit. And this is a hallmark of the left. This is that shit I do not like from the left. That woke shit. That's what I be meaning when I talk about that woke shit, among other things. They have all kinds of like sophisticated but bullshit ass justifications for what is essentially a fallacy of association. Just because I use the same words as somebody who thinks really crazy shit does not mean I think really crazy shit. That's dumb. But David Pakman just casually just does that, and he's not the only one. He's kind of an exemplar of a set of politically cultural norms, let's say, on the left that does this. Now, to be fair, people on the right do, I think, an analogous version of this kind of thing too. They hear the kinds of verbiage that are typically associated with the woke, and they'll imbue that with all kinds of meanings that I don't think are fair to attribute to the woke and the progressive types, to be fair. So this happens on both sides. But I'm witnessing it happening on this particular side. And the irony is that he's presenting this as if it just makes sense, as if he has some kind of insight as a as a uber intelligent, fucking uber keen progressive. He knows how to spot those those troublesome far right wingers or some shit, I guess, maybe.
Now, I'm not saying Tulsi is necessarily a QAnon person. I'm not saying that, but that's
You don't get to just say that shit because you have no evidence for that, bruh.
language that is finely tuned and tested to press the buttons in the brains of very particular people.
In the brains. I don't know what the fuck that was about. That was weird. Maybe that's just a little quirk of the way he expressed it. Also, I have questions about like how overly simplistic are you thinking about how persuasion works on people? Like, I do understand that for a certain segment of the population, it doesn't take much to convince them of things that may or may not be true, for sure. You do have sheeple, but I think he's kind of overstating it a little bit. No, are there that many people who are going to hear that language and it's gonna like I don't know, do whatever subliminal shit happens in a person's brain when they're being dog whistled to, and they're gonna be like, aha, I got you, I understand, I'll read you loud and clear, stand back and stand by. Like, what? Like, really? Is that how it works? I guess. I mean, maybe there's a lot of people for whom that's true. The irony is that there's a lot of people for whom that's true on the left, and that's how David Pakman gets to get away with the shit that he just pulled, that I just kind of exposed, which is, I mean, essentially the core contention is she used the no word. She used the words that we have come as progressives to associate with the far right crazy Q people. Therefore, she's associated with them in some non-trivial way. Or she's dog whistling to them in some way, I guess. And now she's gonna get support from them. But what's weird is that she's not even joining the GOP. Wouldn't you expect her to join the GOP if that's what she's positioning herself to do, like in some weird dog whistling message? Like, she's been on Fox News, but a lot of progressive types have been on Fox News. Fucking what's her name? Stacey Abrams went on Fox News not too long ago to try to make her case and make and make it seem like she hasn't been lying all this time about denying election results, which she has. I might put that shit in post. But like, all kinds of left-leaning figures are brave enough to go on Fox News and try to make their case for whatever reason. I think Gavin Newsom was on Fox News not too long ago. Just because you go on Fox News doesn't mean, but he was, but okay, but to be fair, to Steelman a little bit, she was way more chummy with the people on Fox News than Stacey Abrams, who was way more antagonistic, and Gavin Newsom was way more antagonistic. And so if you go on Fox News and you're a person on the left, you have to be really antagonistic to kind of show your loyalty. And if you're too chummy, then you might get accused of, sleeping with the enemy, so to speak. And she's also been very chummy with and what's different about her, and he mentioned this before, to be fair to him, is that she replaced Tucker Carlson on Tucker Carlson Tonight one time. So she got kind of special favoritism and special treatment. And so that kind of demonstrates that, like, she's really, really chummy with those people. So there's something there that I think is substantive. There's a substantive difference between her just appearing on Fox News, to be fair. But it doesn't mean that she's in the GOP, though. like independents can do whatever the fuck they want. It's kind of like a perk of being independent. You don't have to be like, there's no pressure on you to be have like forced antagonism just to virtue signal to your fucking base. Otherwise they'll turn on you because they'll start accusing you of all kind of baseless shit, like Pakman is accusing her of, because that's what happens on the left. Now it happens on the right too. Right wingers accuse people on their side of all kind of shit, not really caring for the country. Think about the way that they did Liz Cheney, the way that they talk about rhinos and shit like that, all of that shit, the number Trumpers. So it happens on the right too, but the left, it seems like it's like the rule. It's like way more common though. Like they organize in such a way as to make anybody who deviates from their kind of orthodoxy fall in line, lest they be ostracized and lumped in with the no good, very bad, evil Republicans. Like Tulsi's clearly an independent. Even they tried this with Andrew Yang, and Andrew Yang has been a little bit more, jovial with the Republicans than I think your average leftist and the average Democrat would be. But like, bruh, like lumping him in with the GOP is weird too. I mean, the motherfucker started his own party, so maybe a lot, it's more obvious that he's not going to do that. But I think recently she was on some news segment and she said that somebody covered her. I think it was local news in Hawaii, said that she's going to be an independent, like a part of the independent party, I should
Former
say.
Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard announced today she's leaving the Democratic Party.
KITV4's Jeremy Lee joins us now live in studio with more on tonight's top story. Jeremy.
Mika and Rick, independent. That's how Tulsi Gabbard's team responded to KITV after we asked for clarification on the former Congresswoman's current political affiliation. Tulsi Gabbard made her announcement in a 1-minute 19-second Twitter video from early Tuesday morning, which tallied up over 7 million views in less than a day. Her reasons for saying goodbye to the Dems?
Today's Democratic Party does not believe in our constitutionally protected right to free speech. Fostering diversity of thought and freedom of expression is the very foundation of any flourishing democracy.
With the announcement came speculation as to if and how she might run for office in the future.
She could run as an independent. She could run as a third-party candidate. She can also run as a Democrat or a Republican. In most places, you don't need permission to run for a political party. So what this does is not about switching loyalties in an official sense. It's about her saying, I've had enough of the Democratic Party, which in effect she's been saying for a long time, and she's moved on.
Others have still run for a political party as an independent. In 2020, Bernie Sanders ran, but the DNC required him in a written affirmation to pledge himself to serve as a member of the Democratic Party. Technically, the door stays open. Some observed the effort was accompanied by the media-savvy launch of the new podcast, The Tulsi Gabbard Show. Tulsi explained in the first episode why she's leaving.
When the party in power does not believe in the rule of law, but they're responsible for writing and enforcing laws, our democracy is doomed.
And this evening, Gabbard appeared on Tucker Carlson's program on Fox News to talk about her decision, plus the escalation of tensions with Russia. She criticized the current administration for what she's called pushing the nation to the brink of nuclear war. Reporting live, Jeremy Lee, KITV4 Island News.
I wonder if she'll team up with Andrew Yang at some point. What if Andrew Yang's going to actively recruit her? That'd be interesting. I think we need more politicians in the middle, like me. I don't like this right left shit. This is annoying. But anyway, let's go back to the Pac-Man.
It's not an accident, okay? And by the way, warmongers. Remember, Hillary was going to get us into 5 wars. Biden was going to get us into 5 wars. None of it has happened, okay? None of it has happened. But they love to say it, these are MAGA right-wing conspiracy talking points.
What makes them MAGA though? I don't understand. Is it because people who are of the MAGA persuasion have said them before? So now anybody else who says them is somehow tacitly subscribing to MAGA? Why does MAGA have a fucking monopoly on these talking points or on these positions? That's weird. Like if a person is on the left, but even they view it, does that make them MAGA somehow magically? Like, is that how it works? Like, like certain opinions are owned by certain political groups, like certain ideas, and like if you subscribe to them, then you're part of. You agree with everything else. Like this guilty by association logic is weird, bro. I don't understand this shit, and this is like such a great example of it. Also, like Hillary, particularly under Obama, like they were engaged in warmongering. What the fuck is he talking about? Does he not know that? What the fuck, bro? Like the Democrats have been engaged in warmongering, fam, especially under Obama. What the fuck you mean, David Pakman? You have to know this. You can't do political commentary for a living and not know that, bro. What? Also, aren't we on the verge of like a fucking World War III and shit, fam? Like, isn't that what Tulsi Gabbard is talking about? Like, why are you acting like Democrats ain't doing what Democrats have always been fucking doing, which is starting shit for no fucking reason and for all kinds of political gain. The fuck you mean, David Pakman? What? And don't get me wrong, Republicans have been warmongers too, by the way, which is one of the reasons why it makes sense why she's not just running into the arms of Republicans, because it would be weird for her to cite warmongering as why she left the Democrats and then join the Republicans. Like Kyle Kalinske made a point like that, and I think he was right about that. Like Republicans in many ways are worse. I mean, fucking the way that we, went to war to get oil under fucking George W.H. Bush was fucking a travesty. Like what? Like we shouldn't have did that shit either. Like, so if you're against warmongering, you like signing up for the GOP is weird. That's like being against child molestation and signing up for the Catholic Church. Jab. We should bring back Catholic priest jokes. I think those are hilarious. All right, let's go back to the Pac-Man.
Who were driven by cowardly wokeness, who
remember the wokeness. What they think of as wokeness is the tiniest sliver of the left. It's not me. It's not really my audience.
Look at them
it's
downplaying
not
it.
the Democratic Party. It's not, it's same old stuff.
David, you're pretty woke. Stop lying. So the downplay of the wokeness thing, a lot of progressives do that, and it's weird. It's so fucking weird. Like I don't understand that. Like y'all don't recognize that motherfuckers on your side are woke tarded. Like y'all don't get that shit. It's like some strong Kool-Aid on the left, bro. Like like I get that it's a minority, right? And so to a certain extent, when people say it's a fringe, that's kind of what they're getting at, and they're basically right. Like it's a minority. It's a vocal minority that have an outsized voice on the discourse because those motherfuckers get propped up by other motherfuckers who are they're primed to be super fucking supportive of that radical shit on the left, fam. I live in fucking Wokeville, USA. I hear this shit all the time in San Francisco. What the fuck I'm talking about? The fuck you mean? That minority is hella loud, fam, on your side. Like for real. And then you have like spaces like Twitter where they get an even more pronounced and outsized voice. So I don't know why he's downplaying that shit. Like to steelman him somewhat, it is a minority faction, right? But you can't downplay how vocal they are and how like that's all we fucking hear from your side, right? Like what the fuck are you talking about? And y'all don't even do like basically anything substantive to like put them motherfuckers in their place when they say dumb shit that misrepresents what you actually think. You just ignore it and you pretend like it's smaller than it really is, or it's not a big deal when it really is. It reflects poorly on your entire side. And you pretending like it doesn't mean that it doesn't. The fuck? And who the fuck is they, David Pakman? Like, are you talking about anybody who disagrees with the left? Is that what you mean? You're lumping her in? Or are you just assuming she's a Republican now or a conservative now? Because that seems to be the tenor of what you're implying, even though you haven't explicitly said it. Or maybe you haven't. Maybe you did. I don't know. But is that what you mean? You just mean the Republicans, the far right? Is that what you mean? Do you mean the Q people? Like who the fuck is they?
divide us by racializing every issue.
Okay. The criticism that the left racializes everything is a way to disqualify a priori any discussion of racism or racial inequality.
But it's true though. Like the left is constantly talking about race and applying their critical race lens to everything, even when it doesn't fucking apply, David Pakman. And it's usually the uber fucking radical woke tards that get an outsized voice in the discourse that are constantly suggesting that shit. And a lot of motherfuckers who are a little bit less woke and have sipped the Kool-Aid to a lesser extent are either passively allowing that shit or like endorsing the rabble rousers on your side, David Pakman. So what the fuck are you talking about? She's right. Now, to be fair to David, I do think that there are people on the right who evoke this language of that's just woke in order to not have to actually address issues of racial inequality. And I think that there's a substantive conversation to be had about racial inequality for sure, to David Pakman's point. And I think he's right about that. So there are people like that who exist. But every single person who criticizes the ways with which the left politics with respect to race issues is not doing that. And that's what's disingenuous about what he said, is he's making it sound like they're all, like every time this happens, that they're all just trying to avoid substantive discussions about race issues in the country. That's not true either.
That you go, they racialize everything. Hard right move. She's gone fully in.
And
I mean, again, I acknowledge that there are people in, I guess you can call them on the hard right or far right. I don't know what the distinction between those would be, who do what he says. But ironically, they're a minority faction too. Does he think that is most of the right? Does he think about it analogous to the way that I think about the woke, in that, like, yeah, they're a minority group, but they have an outsized voice on the discourse, but from the right, and so it's still a problem, and it implicates other people on the right who don't speak up enough against it. Maybe, I mean, I would be amenable to that. I think that kind of criticism I probably would agree with, but like, there are substantive critiques to be had about the ways with which racial politics from the left are being done, and they're not all necessarily being done on the up and up. I feel like that's fair. I don't think he wants to even touch that, though.
stoking anti-white racism.
And that's the other side. The left is anti-white and racist against whites. The left is mostly white, guys. That's the reality.
Yeah, but is this motherfucker really going to deny that, like vitriolic anti-white rhetoric, like from woke white liberal types, and also from like the uber woke people of color and BIPOC people on the left happens regularly? Like, is he denying that? Like, the motherfuckers that want white people to kiss the shoes of black people and shit, like those motherfuckers. Now, you can say that they're rare, and in that sense, you can maybe have a part of that fringe argument that a lot of progressives make. I think that that's true. The people who actually want like white people to kiss the shoes of black people are rare, but they get an outsized voice in the discourse, though. But like, I don't know, why is he pretending like that doesn't happen? Why is he pretending like motherfuckers ain't really saying anti-white shit on a regular basis? Like, like how Kalinske tried to dance this line too. He acknowledged that they exist, but he downplayed them as fringe. David Pakman is not even trying that. I think maybe he could say that, and but like, he seems to be going the conspiratorial route. He seems to be implying that people only use that rhetoric because what they really want to do is they want to avoid talking about race altogether, or I don't know, they want to promulgate white supremacy or some shit. That's usually the kinds of accusations that people on the left give. David Pakman didn't say that, to be fair, but I don't know. He's using rhetoric that suggests it. See, I can do it too.
Who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality.
And again, it's not hostility to people of faith or spirituality. It's hostility to imposing that faith or spirituality on civil government. It's about openly, as Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and all of them have said, saying we are Christian nationalists and that should be enshrined in civil law.
I don't think they've ever said we are Christian nationalists, but I do think that he's right. Boebert, he means Lauren Boebert. I do think that he's right that Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene have said things that suggest that what their conception for the country is that we put God back into everything. That this is God's country. They do use rhetoric like that, and it's kind of a lot of GOPers historically have used rhetoric like that. And again, Democrats used to say shit like that too, but it's not cool anymore, so I don't think they say it as much. Unless they're old dinosaurs. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's it's an exaggeration to say that they're Christian nationalists. And actually, I think the use of that rhetoric isn't accidental, ironically, to kind of use his point against him. I think that rhetoric calls to mind something akin to like Nazis and stuff like that, which is the kinds of associations that that these people want to maintain when it comes to people of the GOP. I don't think that Tulsi Gabbard is a Nazi in any way, shape, or form, and I don't think that the vast majority of people in the GOP are Nazis or even Nazi light or Nazi like or even Nazi adjacent. I don't think Trump was a Nazi, but there are people who to this day will say he was literally Hitler, which is stupid because he couldn't literally be another person, law of identity and whatnot. But I think what they mean is that he's so Hitler-like that it makes sense to say as even a mild hyperbole that he's literally Hitler, even though it doesn't. But yeah, like I get that impetus for that kind of language or rhetoric, but like it doesn't seem like it's true, like at all. But I guess, I mean, I don't know. If you sip the Kool-Aid long enough, I guess you can convince yourself of that.
That's wrong. That's not constitutional.
But he's right. So the substance of what he's saying that I agree with, and I agree with it earlier, is that I actually would agree with him. I don't think that that any religion and religious presuppositions should be imposed on the rest of the country. We're not a theocracy. So I get that. I actually that's actually like a core liberal principle that I actually agree with. Um, and I would hope that the woke-tards don't deviate from anything like that ever.
Who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans.
And remember, the number of people saying defund the police, it's almost zero, and the movement has no power.
Yo, they've really 180 from defund the police, because that was all the fuck I heard in summer of 2020. I'm tell you that shit. The amount of people is zero. I mean, I guess, does he mean politicians? Because only some politicians have been bold enough to actually like come out and say that shit publicly. And one of the reasons why they were scared is because that shit is uber fucking radical. It makes no fucking sense, and it made them look dumb, and it was going to negatively impact their campaign chances. Some of them were bold enough to actually say it. Some of them were bold enough to actually like try to do it, like Keisha Lance Bottoms, and actually I think Keisha Lance Bottoms refused to do it in Atlanta, and she got a little flack for it at first until everybody started to realize that she made the right call. The what is it? What's her name in Chicago? Lightfoot. I think Lightfoot like thought about it, but then decided not to do it, or maybe reversed it. But there's been a lot of liberal cities that actually tried to do it and they reversed it. Notably in New York with fucking Mayor De Blasio's dumbass. He tried that shit. That shit backfired. Stacey Abrams was going around calling for it. Now she's going around saying, like, no, I never said that. Yeah, they've completely 180'd on that shit. And David Pakman's acting like nobody actually ever cared about that. like, okay, David, if you say so. Again, there was a minority faction on the left, to be fair, and they had an outsized voice in the discourse, and it made it seem like that was a more popular position than it really was. And so Democrats politicians were on the verge of pussyfooting around to getting to doing that shit. And then they kind of tried to do that shit to appease their voter bases, because it seemed like their voter bases really, really wanted that shit. And then it came out after the fact that actually like 80% of the black community didn't think that was a good idea. And the black community comprises a lot of the voter bases of a lot of fucking politicians all over the country. Now, David Pakman's right to point out that that the left is mostly white. Democrats are mostly white. It's one of the reasons why they've become so elitist lately, to be fair. And that's actually one of the things that she's speaking to. That seemed to go over his fucking head. But woke white liberals are some of the main ones on that woke-tarded shit that are spewing anti-white rhetoric, which is weird. It's like self-immolating. So that doesn't really prove what he thinks it proves to say that. But okay. And it doesn't really matter, because anti-white racism coming from the left is what she's talking about. So just because you have white people who are doing it doesn't mean it's not happening. The fuck? But again, I guess he keeps falling back on the fact that it's a minority on the left, and I agree with that. I think it is a minority, but it's a very vocal minority though. So I don't know, bro. Like it's causing problems for y'all's ability to win elections. But whatever.
Reform? Absolutely. The 10 to 12 point plan I outlined, of course, but this is again their new talking point. But remember, when they didn't like what happened on January 6th, they went after the Capitol Police. When they didn't like what happened with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, they go after the FBI. They're not the pro-police, pro-law enforcement people they even claim to be.
There are people who are hypocritical on the right about that, for sure. So they were like, positioning themselves as pro-police very staunchly. We got to protect the police, defend the police, refund or fund the police. And then when that shit started happening against their side, then they had some criticism. Now, to be fair, a lot of libertarian types on the right are always had criticisms against police. So that all of them are not hypocritical in this way. They've been consistent. But there are some who kind of flip-flop, particularly when the FBI went after Mar-a-Lago. Now, that's a form of law enforcement. It's not the police, but it's a form of law enforcement. And so what that signaled to a lot of people on the right is that the FBI is corrupt because they're going after a corrupt politician, and they objected to that. And that makes sense. Maybe some of them woke up to it and they weren't thinking about it. But there are a lot of libertarian types who have always been suspicious of government authority. And so their criticisms of the police are consistent, to be fair to them. But he's not wrong to point out that there's been some hypocrisy on the right, for sure. I just don't like that he's overgeneralizing, though. I think he can be more nuanced than that.
Who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state.
How is that a lie? Like, if the current administration under Biden is purposely not like securing the border, then how are they not for open borders? Like, I really want that explained. How is that a lie? Where's the lie, David Pakman? Right? If there are more steps to be taken to secure the border, better. And you're not securing the border as well as even in the previous administration, which you detest, then how are you not for open borders? I'm so fucking confused, right? If you are instigating pull factors, which are attracting illegal border crossings, and you have record numbers of illegal border crossings under your administration because of your soft on crime policies and your soft on the border security policies, then how is that not open borders? Is the contention that open borders is an exaggeration? Because I'm amenable to that. I think open borders kind of is it's not like it's completely open and there's no security. There is security. There are people who are being apprehended. There are people who are being arrested. There are people who are being quasi deported, kind of sometimes. But like, bruh, hella motherfuckers are coming over here, and a lot of them motherfuckers are staying illegally. So like, what are you talking about? What is the lie? Like, I really, man, I wish I could talk to this motherfucker and get him to like press this nigga on this shit he be saying.
After their political opponents.
That's a Trump line. This is a full MAGA person now.
So anytime a person says something in alignment with Donald Trump, they're a Trump MAGA person. Why does Trump have a monopoly on certain ideas or certain like positions? Like the guilty by association shit just, man, that's so fucking trippy, yo. Like, that's so trippy. But I guess, I don't know, you're in bed with Trump if you say anything that remotely resembles anything that he's ever said in his entire like political career, I guess.
And above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war.
Isn't the guy threatening the nuclear war, Putin, the one who's actually doing that?
Yeah, but you're acting like the America hasn't taken steps to like exacerbate the situation or increase tensions with a superpower that is capable of launching nukes. So like you can't ignore the role that America's playing in it. Like, we're funding the person that Putin's currently going to war with, the country, which is the Ukraine. Now, I think that Putin's guilty of transgressing against the Ukraine, to be fair. I don't think that he should have invaded Ukraine. I think that there's totally fair criticism against Putin for that. Putin seems like a crazy person for sure, but like denying that America is instigating things with Ukraine is weird. And to a certain extent, they're kind of instigating things with China too. And China has nukes too. So like, I don't know, bro. Like, yeah, Ukraine's our allies and we have certain kinds of obligations, I guess, to protect defend our allies. And we're going to look weak as fuck if we don't, for sure. And we're launching all kinds of sanctions on Russia and shit like that. Like, we're instigating shit. We're building tensions for sure. Now, to be fair, it's actually a real conundrum because doing nothing can also damage us. And doing something is also like arguably not in our best interest either because of the increasing of tensions. So it's a conundrum. I'm not going to make it sound like it's a simple thing. There's like a simple solution. A lot of these kind of foreign things our relationships with foreign countries are very, very in the global sphere are very, very complicated and nuanced. So I'm not going to saddle that with David Pakman in terms of like I want to be fair about that. However, he's acting like it's all Putin's fault and America is nothing to do with it. Like that seems I don't know. It seems far fetched if you actually know how our foreign relations and our role that we're playing in exacerbating tensions.
Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Oh.
Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not.
Oh.
Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party.
All right. So then she says, leave the party with me. So she uses all the buzzwords that will make the right love her even more. She really hasn't been a Democrat for as long as I can remember. She's essentially a reactionary who puts her finger to the wind and says, you know, I didn't get any real attention from the left other than the small cult of personality I managed to kind of coalesce around me because I don't really bring anything to the table. So let's go.
That's wild. So she's literally. I showed you guys on the political article, I believe. No, the NPR article. She's literally been a Democrat since she was 21 officially. When she first won office in Hawaii. She's been Democrat ever since. I don't know, like, how you could argue that she's not really a Democrat. I mean, this is kind of like no true Scotsman thing going on. But like, I guess what he means is that she hasn't passed the purity test as long as he remembers. So she wasn't like she was a Democrat in name only. She was a dino, but she wasn't like really a Democrat, right? He's talking about her the way that Trump talks about the Republicans that don't like him, or the MAGA crowd talks about the Republicans that aren't like pro-Trump or whatever. So it's interesting to see the progressives kind of stoop to that kind of thing. It's very Trumpian, which is a new term that they made up. But like, yeah, it's interesting. I don't think that she was ever like a stereotypical like woke progressive ever. And so to whatever extent that's basically what David Pakman's saying, he's right about that. But like, I don't know, man. Just because she's not like uber woke and uber progressive doesn't mean she's not a Democrat, right? Like you can be a Democrat and not be those things, i.e. Joe Manchin, i.e. Christian Sinema. Now, it seems like David Pakman, if he's going to be consistent, would have to say that those two figures, who have been the bane of the existence of the left for a while now because they've been basically fucking over Joe Biden's policy agenda. It seems like he'd have to say that they're not Democrats either, or that they're Democrats in name only or something, but they're not like truly, really Democrats because they're not like progressive enough for his taste. But what would be interesting is that he'd probably have to say that about like the majority of the people in the party right now. They're not really Democrats. Even though this kind of new leftward progressive push is actually fairly recent, like having Democrats that are like uber fucking woke and uber fucking progressive by his standards and according to his tastes is actually new. That shit don't go back. It doesn't have as long a history in the Democrat Party as he would like it, as he would, I guess, makes it seem. So I don't know, man. I guess the majority of Democrats in the Democrat Party historically have not been real Democrats according to his new progressive standards or whatever. Like what? Like that's just weird. It's just amazing how the progressive woke types kind of establish new normals and then they like retroactively judge everybody by their new woke standards that they clearly haven't thought through. Mind-boggling. Anyway.
Go to the place where you don't need to bring anything substantive to the table. I can just use buzzwords and talking points and talk about an elitist cabal and get attention. That's the conspiracy right. That's the MAGA right. Hillary was right again, guys. She is once again doing the bidding of the Russians. Again, not a Russian asset, not a Russian agent. This is the type of democracy destabilizing language that the...
So Tulsi Gabbard's doing the bidding of the Russians? Where the fuck did you get off making that accusation? Like I've heard these accusations before. I haven't looked into them. No, they seem baseless and stupid. But I guess I'll do my research. I'll do my due diligence later. But like how is she doing the bidding of the Russians? And in how is anything that she said in any way, shape, and form undermining our democracy? Is it undermining the democracy to leave the Democrat Party? Is that what he's saying? Like you have to stay in the Democrat Party? You have to support the Democrat Party in order to like maintain our democracy? We can't have a democracy without the Democrat Party? Maybe. I mean, that's a bold ass claim, but okay. You say so. Like the only thing that is preserving our democracy is the Democrat Party. For real? Is it? Do you really think that? Or maybe progressivism? Maybe progressives. That's the like anything that's not progressive enough is the only like progressivism is the only way to maintain a true democracy. Maybe I think David Pakman probably does believe some shit like that because he seems to be sipping that Kool-Aid for sure. So maybe that's what he means. I don't know. Maybe that's what he thinks.
Russians and the Chinese and everybody loves. Now, again, you can say, well, let's
wait. No, it's not just the Russians; it's the Chinese. The Chinese love this too. The Chinese love people leaving the Democrat Party because it's destabilizing our democracy. Or the rhetoric she uses is destabilizing our democracy. Maybe I get. I'm genuinely baffled by this take, but whatever.
listen, good for them then. Doesn't mean, fine. I'm just saying the idea that she is fundamentally acting in the best interest of the United States, as she claims, is obviously not true. She's becoming a great tool of these authoritarian right-wing regimes that love to frame the United States as being unstable democratically. And quite frankly, we are to some degree, but it's thanks to people like this, not that they're pointing it out. They're causing that. Oh, Trump really won, all this different stuff. So here come the book deals. Here come the speaking engagements. If you follow the sort of money trail, it leads to the same type of people. They monetize being anti-woke. They monetize all the stuff that Tulsi is talking about here. The saddest thing about the entire Tulsi episode, and it is very sad, is the number of fellow leftists who were bamboozled by Tulsi. I'm glad I never fell for it. Go back to my clip in January of 2019. Watch the video.
Aren't you monetizing being anti-GOP? I can't with this. I feel like he's monetizing being anti-GOP all while he's criticizing monetizing being anti-woke. I don't know. It just seems like he's doing the very thing that he's criticizing, and that makes him a fucking hypocrite. I mean, he even had a shameless plug to another episode of on his own channel. But whatever, though. I mean, you know, get your money, I guess. I don't know, man. It's hard out here because under the Biden administration, gas prices are high as fuck. And so is everything else because of inflation. So monetize everything, I guess. I don't know. But I'm sure it's the evil, no good, very bad corporation's fault and Putin's fault. And it's never Joe Biden's fault or anybody else's fault. It's never a progressive's fault why we have to suffer the things that we have to suffer. But whatever, man. All right, man. So I all that to say, all the stuff I showed you, I want to wrap it up, put on it. Tulsi Gabbard leaving the Democratic Party or the Democrat Party, because calling them Democratic feels gross, is actually a symptom of greater trends whereby a lot of people are starting to realize that the Democrat Party ain't it, and they are leaving the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party is hemorrhaging voters from the Black community and the Latino community more broadly. They're losing independence with this woke shit, and the progressives are pretending in their smug way, that's the only way they know, that this is not a big deal. And every time that they take L's, they blame the Democrat Party for not being woke enough when it's the wokeness that is the fucking problem. And it's like they refuse to understand that shit. They can't get their heads out of their own woke asses for some reason. So I guess they're just going to continue to lose elections and maybe get trounced in the midterms. Now, I wouldn't put it past the Republicans to fuck it up, though. Republicans ain't all that. Republicans have a lot of shortcomings of their own. This is a wonderful opportunity for them, but they may miss it. We'll see. So I'm gonna go ahead and end it there. But yeah, my take on the Tulsi Gabbard thing is it's not really about Tulsi. It's about the wider trends of a lot of people waking up to how woke-hearted the Democrat Party is becoming, and the progressives. It seems like they can't admit it to themselves because to do that would be to admit that their entire ideology and worldview is batshit fucking crazy, and in a lot of ways, it is. Not universally, not everywhere. There's nuggets of truth. There's things that even I agree with when it comes to my alignment with progressives, certain progressive policies. I did a segment recently on what Joe Biden did. I thought it was a win for the current administration with pardoning those at the federal level for simple weed possession. I thought that was a win. I agree with a policy like that. That's a progressive policy. That's substantive. I agree with that. Transing the kids, not so much. That shit's stupid. That's batshit fucking crazy. Defunding the police, not so much. That's batshit fucking crazy. He tried to downplay it. One of the reasons why I think he tried to downplay it is because it makes his side look bad. Yeah, that shit is fucking stupid. The soft on crime policies in places like San Francisco that are like desecrating our city and make it and give rise to embarrassing statistics. Like in the past year, we have more people die of drug overdoses than COVID. Yeah, not my cup of tea. These are terrible fucking policies. Facts. Anyway, till next time, y'all. Peace.